Hello and welcome again to another episode of Comic Talk here on The Guy Who Sounds Funny. Now, thanks to the modern miracles of technology, you guys do not have to put up with all of the failed attempts I have made to try and do this video. It's one of those things where when you're most passionate about something, you tend to screw up telling people about it. So, there have been a lot of attempts at this video tonight, and I keep messing it up. So, I'm hoping this is the final time, and I will probably repeat this 5 more times in other videos, and you'll only hear it once. But let's talk about Spider-Gwen. Now, this is a character born out of Marvel's attempts to capture new audiences and to refresh old characters in a way that gets people's attention. I'm not going to sugarcoat it any other way. Comic companies want to make money just like any other company. So, to apply any other politics or logic to it is nonsense. They're just trying to get more people to read their titles. And when it first came out, I very much felt that way about the property. I wasn't interested in reading about some new Spider variant that was based off of Gwen Stacie. It just seemed like a gimmick to me. But then a friend suggested I should pick up one of the early issues. I don't have it now. It was something I borrowed from somebody else. And I flipped through it, read some of the story, and I have to tell you, I was immediately sucked into this character. I really, really felt the story that went behind this, because I'm a diehard Spider-Man fan. And through all the media and all the years, I have reheard and had rehashed Spider-Man's origin story so many different times. And they even make mention in this series that it is the only multiversal timeline where Peter does not become Spider-Man. Even in the Miles Morales, the Marvel Ultimates line, Miles still had a Peter Parker in his timeline, and that Peter Parker died. Miles then had an interaction of his own with a spider that then transferred him spider powers, which were different than, as the Into the Spider-Verse movie calls him, Peter A. Parker's powers. This is a different situation. This is a multiversal timeline where Gwen, being at the same point in time where Peter Parker would have gotten his powers, she instead was bit by the spider. So it's like a very extended Marvel what if. So what if Gwen Stacie got bit by the spider instead of Peter Parker? And this is the story. So in Earth 65, Gwen gets bit. She obtains the powers of the spider and essentially faces all the big events that Peter Parker had to face and comes out of them different, sometimes worse, sometimes better. And what I really like is that one of the overarching themes of this collection is that Gwen Stacie was one of the female characters that was a strong result of fridging. She was killed off in her comic book to lend moral complexity to Spider-Man's character. And that was what her death was meant to achieve. It was supposed to traumatize Peter and leave him with baggage so he was a more compelling character. This storyline, that all still happened. And this Gwen is the only spider persona that can jump the different timelines of the multiverse. She's not trapped in her own her own timeline. And they even make mention in later issues that she feels like she has something to prove. She has to prove that she is a strong, independent person that doesn't need Peter Parker. In every other timeline that she runs into herself in, she's dependent on Peter. Her world revolves around Peter Parker. This one does not. And it's terrible to her that her best friend, Peter Parker, died. But at the same time, seeing all these multiversal variants of her, she feels like this is the one time in all of time and space and the multiverse where Gwen Stacie gets to shine and be her own person. And it really does show throughout all of this. There's also a lot of moral complexity faced in the short 60-issue run that, much like Peter Parker faced, where she has to come to grips with the realities of being a superhero. You know, more realistic versions of that, where it's not like godlike power, she still has to try and be a normal person. And to see it from a more female view, I think works out too. There was a scene I read where she's trying to go back to community college, and she straight up thinks in her head that if she was wearing Spider-Gwen's mask, she could easily handle this and go in and conquer the world. But when it has to be Gwen Stacie, she can't do it. You know, it's scary to her then. She doesn't have her mask to help her. And at that point, she had also revealed her secret identity to the world. So everyone knew she was Spider-Gwen. So while she's standing at this door having this panic attack over trying to re-enroll in college, two girls walk up and start fangirling over her, and she panics and, without even making a comment to them, just runs away. Just straight up runs down the hall and out the door, going, "I can't do this!" Which was some character depth that I was really glad to see. This very easily could have been something shallow and vapid and dumb, but it didn't end up being. Another interesting thing I like about this character and this series overall is that Spider-Gwen, or Ghost Spider, spends more time as the symbiote than she does not. So somewhere around like issue 24 or 25, she ends up obtaining the Venom symbiote, and she refers to it as the Venom. And then that's who she stays as throughout the rest of the comics. You can see this issue here, Ghost Spider 9, which has the legacy number of 59 out of the whole series. It's another thing I'll talk about here in a second. Ghost Spider 9, she's still in the symbiote costume. She uses the symbiote's ability to change its clothing to look like her old costume when, you know, she's just swinging around town and everything. But when she gets into highly stressful situations or extremely dangerous situations and the symbiote can no longer maintain the illusion, she reverts back to being Gwenom. And I like it because I always have felt that Venom was a failure on Spider-Man's part. It was a test that Peter Parker did not beat. I mean, you can take it other ways. You can say that he conquered the devil inside him, but I don't feel like he did. Peter had to part from the symbiote. The symbiote gave him far more power. He would have been a better superhero if he had been able to conquer it. He did not. He had to give it up, and that's when it got bitter and it went to Eddie Brock. Gwen Stacie did not fail in that sense. I don't know the full story because I haven't been able to read every one of the 60 issues yet. But as you can tell by the fact that in issue 59, which is one short of the final issue, she's still wearing the symbiote and she's still a superhero, that Gwen Stacie faced that same tempting power, that ability to corrupt and be bad because it would be easier, And she overcame it. She beat the devil, in a sense, and overcame, which is something Peter Parker was never able to do. So I thought that was really interesting, and that was a really cool addition to this character that sets her apart, again, from other characters in the Spider-Verse. And there's, other examples of characters who have been able to overcome the symbiote. There's I forgot his name now. The Anti-Venom. Oh, yeah, there you go. Anti-Venom. The white Venom antibody that's able to undo all of the symbiote damage. But most spider people that come into contact with the symbiote fail in that test. Gwen Stacie did not. So I give that thumbs up too. Now, the only other thing I want to talk about on this, it's really confusing, and I understand why they did it, but at the same time, it's a little frustrating. Title. As you see here, up to issue 30, it's Spider-Gwen. And then at some point after issue 30, it switches to Ghost Spider. Actually, I can tell you exactly what point it was, because this is issue 45, so issue 40, it switches to Spider-Gwen, Ghost Spider. And they ran with that for another 10 issues. Made it to issue 50 as Spider-Gwen, Ghost Spider. And then at issue 50, or I guess 51, it switches to just Ghost Spider. Now, I read some articles from back when those changes were made, and some of the statements that Marvel made about the situation was that Spider-Gwen was a title that was attached to Spider-Man as an attachment. In her universe, her character was named Spider-Woman, and very often was also referred to as the Ghost Spider after she became Gwenom. But because both those titles didn't keep the character independent, they implied that there was some sort of character attachment to Spider-Man and some relation to the Spider-Man, I guess, family of characters in Earth 616. They wanted to move that away because part of the story was her being an independent character of Spider-Man. So at issue 40, they changed the name to Spider-Gwen Ghost Spider so that the title reflected that she was not a traditional, like, Spider-Man variant. She wasn't some offshoot of Peter Parker. This was a different telling of the story. And then after 10 issues of that, they decided that it no longer needed the Spider-Gwen logoing to go with it for people to recognize that enough people recognized the title as Ghost Spider that she could stand on her own and be Ghost Spider. And then it ran for 10 issues and then ended. I'm not sure why it ended. I'm not sure if it was a cancellation or if it was just that was the end of the story. But she remained Ghost Spider for the rest of those 10 issues. And I do understand that they were making a statement about her independence as a character and that she wasn't reliant on Peter Parker because that was part of the message in the comics. But it's still really confusing when they do this legacy stuff like they do, and then they don't tell you that they're all interconnected. It's a little frustrating because back in the 90s, if it had a different title, it was a different series. You had the Spectacular Spider-Man, you had the Web of Spider-Man, you had the Amazing Spider-Man, and you had just Spider-Man. And when I did that Maximum Carnage episode, you got to see sometimes all of the stories interconnected and all put themselves together, and then other times they didn't. They were independent publications. So what one group was working on in one issue was different from what another group was working on in another issue. And they would reference back and forth about them, because, it's the same character, same world, but it was still separate. So this being one continuation after another without explanation, and some of these issues still being on shelves at your local comic store when the new issues were coming out. They were putting out second publications of some of these issues while the current publication of this was running. I honestly had times when I was looking at these shelves and I'm like, do I need this one or do I need that one to continue the story? What's going on? So, that's my only gripe. Only gripe. But, Spider-Gwen, in conclusion, was an awesome series in my opinion. And I know they're putting out another mini-series this year, and she's also got a lot of attachment to the Spider-Gwen and Spider-Verse storylines because she's kind of at the center of it. She's the multiverse hopping spider persona. Um, but if you have the opportunity to get your hand on the issues, do it. If you're more of a graphic novel person, I know that all of these have been packaged up and put into graphic novels, and they are absolutely worth the read. So, if you haven't already, go check out Spider-Gwen. Enjoy it. And I will talk to all of you later. Good night.